Hey guys, it's Paul from Online Sax Academy. In today's lesson, we're going to be exploring 5 different sounds with example phrases you can learn over minor chords. So you may well already be aware of what's called a minor pentatonic scale. And when you're getting into improvising, often this will be the first scale you'll get taught. It's a great one to start with, and with those notes you can create phrases like this. After a while though, you may want to explore other sounds on a minor chord. Now, one way to think of that minor pentatonic scale is that it is the 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 7th note from what's called a Dorian minor scale. Dorian is one of the most common scales, and that's the first one we can explore to see what kinds of sounds we can pull out from that to create different kinds of pentatonic scales. So inside this Dorian minor, you'll also be able to find the notes of an E minor pentatonic scale. Now if you compare the E minor pentatonic with the A minor pentatonic, you can see there's only one real change. The C in the A minor pentatonic is turning into a B in the E minor pentatonic. Now to understand the effect that has on the overall sound of the scale, if we build an A minor chord, you'll see where these notes from the pentatonic start to appear. So the basic chord, our A minor triad, we have A, C, E. Now if we keep stacking in thirds, we'll have the note G, and then another third above we get the note B. Notice how that B kind of adds like a floaty quality to the chord. So when we're swapping our C for a B, we're switching out the 3rd degree for the 9th. And that's what gives that E minor pentatonic scale this kind of more floaty kind of sound. And with that E minor pentatonic scale, you can play phrases like this. You can get the free PDF of all the phrases I play today, and that's available at onlinesaxacademy.com, and the link to that is down below. And premium members will be able to get the performance tracks and backing tracks of all these phrases, so you can try out playing some of these phrases along with me, and also try out improvising your own kind of phrases using these pentatonic scales over these backing tracks. Now it doesn't stop there. You can find another minor pentatonic scale within our original A Dorian scale. We can also find the B minor pentatonic scale inside. Now if we go back to extending that chord, last time we got up to the 9th, that's where the B appeared. Now if we add on the 11th, that's a D, and if we add on the 13th, this is where we get the F sharp. And F sharp is the highest extension, and that's what gives it its particularly bright kind of sound. So if we compare A minor pentatonic with B minor pentatonic, essentially that C has still turned into a B, but now we've also got the G turning into the F sharp. So the 7th of the chord in the original is now turning into the 13th. Again, we're going up into the higher extensions, giving this scale an even kind of floatier, brighter sound to it. And you can play phrases like this. There's a cool trick you can do with this B minor pentatonic. Because it's exactly just one tone above our A minor pentatonic, you can try this technique of play something with your A minor pentatonic, and then whatever you played, play the same phrase but up a tone into the B minor pentatonic. And people will be able to hear how you've got the same phrase, but it's shifted up. These are some pentatonics you can find within the A Dorian scale. There's another really nice scale which is the A melodic minor. Now I'm thinking as a jazz musician here, so the melodic minor for jazz musicians is where you have a raised 6th and a raised 7th. Both on the way up the scale and the way down, it's just these set of notes. Now when we look inside these set of notes, you can pick out some really interesting sounds and pentatonics from here as well. Now there's one I really like to use, which I call the E major flat 6 pentatonic, which sounds really complicated, but basically if you take out the notes E, F sharp, G sharp, B and C, that's almost the same notes as an E major pentatonic. An E major pentatonic has E, F sharp, G sharp, B and C sharp. So you can see the only difference between the two is the C sharp is now a C natural. Now, because we're using an original source scale of the melodic minor, this has its own unique sound. And this sounds really good when your minor chord is like your home chord. So if you're playing tunes where the home key is a minor key, things like Summertime or Alone Together, or like a minor blues like Mr. PC, then it can be really fun to explore this melodic minor sound, but with these pentatonic scales instead. So this scale sounds like this. And you can create really interesting phrases with these set of notes like this. You can broaden your definition of a pentatonic scale and just look for interesting collections of notes. So another one I like to take from this melodic minor is if we take the E, G sharp, and then A, B, and C, where sometimes there's quite a big interval, there's quite a big gap between the scale tones. So here we've got a major third between the E and the G sharp, and a major third between the C and the E. And then at other points we have the smallest possible gap of just half a step, a semitone, like between the G sharp and the A and the B and the C. And this nice mix of wider intervals and smaller intervals can create really interesting melodic shapes when you start to improvise with just those notes on an A minor chord. So this is what the scale sounds like. And here's some example phrases using those notes. Now, I don't really have an official label for that scale. I suppose you could think of it as like the 1, 3, 4, 5 from E major, because we've got the E, G sharp, A, B, plus the flat 6, the C natural. But it doesn't really matter as long as you know, these notes sound really interesting on an A minor chord. Now, the really cool thing about these A melodic minor shapes is it doesn't just apply for when the chord is A minor. You can actually use these collections of notes over any chord that can be built with an A melodic minor scale. So here's an example of me improvising with those two different shapes over the different chords that you can get from an A melodic minor scale. So have fun exploring these sounds, and you can also have a look into your wider scale and pick out your own collections of notes to create your own unique scales and see what they sound like improvising with over these chords. Alright, if you enjoyed the lesson, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future lessons, and I'll see you guys next week.